want to say is to try and develop a position, or to develop a call for Africa and for South Africa to stand united in this big challenge we face over the next week. We recognize that South Africa is one of the largest emitters globally. It's one of the top 15, and it's the largest emitter in Africa. So, you know, one can think of it as a very rich country. Sadly, this is not the case in South Africa, where, you know, our CO2 emissions are there because of giving electricity below cost to big multinational corporations, where communities don't get that energy. So when we look at the emissions of South Africa, it seems as if we're following in the footsteps of rich industrialized countries. The reality is that the majority of South Africans are poor, and it's the majority of South Africans that are going to be affected by climate change. South Africa allegiances must lie with Africa, and they must remain within Africa. There's much talk in the corridors about South Africa being influenced by the EU as negotiations progress. As South Africa and as Africa, we need our own agenda, one that considers that in the climate catastrophe emergency we face, Africa will burn, and hundreds of millions of people will lose their livelihoods due to drought and flooding. Africa will become poorer, and that is the reality. While we know that in Africa we are blessed with lots of resources. South Africa mustn't have a misguided approach that something out of the COP70 process is better than nothing, and must not repeat the mistakes that were made in Denmark and Mexico with secret texts behind closed doors. In a land where we have achieved a hard-fought for democracy over many decades, South Africa must ensure that this democracy filters through to the UNFCCC, so that governments are answerable to their people and not corporate power in the halls that we're in now. We need to ensure that an outcome, like was said earlier on, meets the African position of a strong climate green fund, just transition, support of legally binding agreements, and a commitment to common but differentiated responsibility. It will be a success for Africa if we avoid these negotiations from locking in a decade of inaction on the climate crisis, which is what a new mandate, again, that has been, you know, filtering through the corridors will do. We cannot afford an ecocide. We cannot allow for a non-binding agreement that will result in rich countries not reducing their emissions meaningfully without offsets. Tomorrow, thousands of people will be marching in the streets. These people will be marching not for Durban, not for South Africa, not for Africa. The thousands of people you will see tomorrow will be marching on behalf of the millions of people globally, the farmers in South Korea, the people living next to oil wells in Nigeria, the people put in prison in Germany because they're resisting coal mines. All these people are saying to this, governments, listen to us. We are marching tomorrow in order to save the world, and to save the world in Africa.